Earlier this year, it was announced that Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy is being developed into a series of movies, with scripts by Sanderson himself. Coincidentally, I've been reading through the trilogy myself recently, so now I can give my verdict on all three books and how well they might work as movies. Mistborn, the Final Empire, is set on a bleak dystopian world, ruled over by the immortal tyrant known as the Lord Ruler. It's a bit of a hellscape. Ash falls from the sky constantly, mists shroud the land every night, and peasants are all ruthlessly oppressed by the ruling nobility. The main character is a young girl called Vin, who works for a gang of thieves. She is recruited by the rebel leader Kelsier, who needs her help to overthrow the system. This may all sound rather generic, and in some respects it is, but the magic system is complex and interesting. Allomancy allows certain people to ingest metals and then use them to enhance their strength or senses. Some of them can manipulate metal objects, which lets them throw coins at their opponents with great force, or throw them on the ground to propel themselves upwards and soar through the skies. There are some excellent action scenes where the protagonists make clever use of their abilities, and it would certainly work well on screen. In fact, it might work even better in a video game, where you can see how much of each metal your character still has left. Most of the characters can only use one metal each, so there is a basic structure of Kelsier pulling together different kinds of allomancers in order to steal the Lord Ruler's secret treasure. But Vin and Kelsier are the viewpoint characters, and they are both Mistborn, which means that they can use all of the different metals. So the characters who can't do feel a bit redundant. Most of the book involves Kelsier training Vin how to use her powers, but alongside this we also have Vin posing as a noblewoman, going to balls, and falling in love with a studious young noble called Elend. These parts feel very much like a young adult novel aimed at teenage girls, and Vin is not a million miles away from the protagonists of The Hunger Games or Divergent, so you can certainly imagine the movie being marketed at a similar audience. As you might expect, things get worse for the gang before they get better. There are plenty of shocking moments, and some key characters end up dead. Kelsier and Vin both have their own confrontations with the Lord Ruler, which could be standout scenes in the movie. Vin is by far the strongest character, going from shy and downtrodden to confident and purposeful over the course of the novel. If this had been made a few years ago, they could have cast Maisie Williams or Mia McKenna Bruce, but now they'll probably go for an unknown. Kelsier is more single-minded, focused on bringing down the Lord Ruler, but Vin helps them become more human and less ruthless. They'll probably cast an established actor for this, probably someone in his mid-30s like Glenn Powell. There's no romance between the two characters in the book, mainly because of the age difference, but in the movie, I guess all bets are off. Most of the other characters are there just to flesh out the crew, providing entertaining banter, but not much else. Cazed is probably the most fleshed out. He's got his own complex magic system and background, but they don't really go into that until the later novels. The Lord Ruler himself is talked of constantly, but only appears a couple of times. They might have to flesh him out a bit for the movie. His backstory is explored in short scenes at the beginning of each chapter, leading up to a big twist at the end, which is surprising, but could have been foreshadowed a bit more. I guess in the movie these scenes could be covered as flashbacks in order to flesh out the Lord Ruler a bit more. His Inquisitors are more of a presence throughout, and they would make for a terrifying visual. These huge soldiers with spikes hammered through their eyes, capable of immense strength and speed, and it takes several encounters before either Vin or Kelsier have any idea how to defeat them. Overall, it's an easy and enjoyable read. The plot is a bit straightforward, but the characters are likeable and the magic system is fascinating, and it leaves you wondering about all these secrets and mysteries left in this world, which are revealed in the other two books. Book 2, The Well of Ascension, is probably the weakest of the trilogy. It's more of a political thriller with very few action scenes. The world and its mysteries are still compelling, and we get more development for some of the characters, but the bigger questions are still left unanswered until the finale. At the start of the novel, the gang are now in charge of their city, but they are stuck there as it is surrounded by 3 armies. So there is a lot of negotiation between the various factions before all hell breaks loose at the end. Vin comes into her own here. There are several fight scenes where she has to use all of her allomantic powers, and they are described in some detail. So these would probably be the standout scenes in the movie. Vin is torn between Elend and Zane, who's a bad boy allomancer for one of the invading armies. And there's a bit of a young adult love triangle going on, where she's torn between this shy young scholar and this psychopathic murderer. So I imagine they'd probably play that up in the trailers and posters. Elend also has a lot of development here. We see his viewpoint much more often, and he goes from being a naive scholar to a proper leader of men. His relationship with Vin is a bit lacking in passion. Sanderson likes to keep things PG, But I guess that's not a problem when the movie would be rated 12 or 15. CZ also gets his own viewpoint chapters here, so we get to see how his metal mind abilities differ from Vin's, with him able to store things like knowledge or strength in his various rings or bracelets and then access them afterwards. He even gets to have a rather sweet romance, despite being a eunuch, and his study of prophecies about the Well of Ascension leads up to the big twist ending. We learn a lot more about the unique creatures of this world here. The Kandra or Asur becomes Vin's closest confidant. His ability to animate the bones of dead bodies leads to him taking the form of a dog for most of the book. So Vin basically gets to have a talking dog sidekick, which is rather fun. We also meet the Kolos here, savage, bloodthirsty monsters who are literally bursting out of their own skin. They can barely be controlled, and they would look amazing on screen. The last quarter or so of the book is by far the best part, with the armies finally attacking the city and Vin having to learn new abilities to save the day. It seems like a happy ending, but then Vin is drawn to the Well of Ascension of the title, and some horrific things happen. It's basically an Empire Strikes Back kind of ending that turns everything on its head. So that could certainly work on screen, and if anything, the movie version of this could be better than the novel. They could cut out all the dull parts and just get to the action. Hero of Ages is the big finale. The world is now in absolute chaos. Ash is falling heavier than ever before, volcanoes and earthquakes are sprouting up everywhere, and the mists are starting to kill people. Desperately trying to save the world, the gang leave their city in search of answers. Vin and Elend lead an army to the mountain fortress of Thadrek City, while Sazed and Spook go to Ertor, which is filled with empty canals turned into thoroughfares, to save it from an evil dictator. So it's good that we get to see more of the world than we did in the first two books. And it would help the movie look a lot different from the first two. The action scenes are scaled up here, beginning with one Mistborn fighting an Inquisitor and a whole army of Kolos, which would have been unthinkable before, and it ends with a whole army of Alamancers fighting thousands of Kolos, so that should also work really well on screen. As before, each chapter is headed by short extracts from in-world texts. In the first two books they told the Lord Ruler's backstory. Here they come from the end of this book, where one character has acquired unlimited knowledge and power, so they lay out the answers to long-standing questions, such as why the world is in the state it's in, where do the Kolos and Kandra come from, and so on. It's much more effective than just doing a massive dump of information at the end, and it provides you with answers throughout. I'm not sure how they would deal with that in a movie. Maybe they would just be cutaways to a kind of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy style narration. Vin is really put through the ringer in this book. Her romantic troubles are over, but she still has to save the world, and she's tormented by visions sent by the evil force behind everything. She spends a big chunk of the book imprisoned and depowered, which makes it all the more satisfying when she finally learns how to use the power of the mists for good. Although the reason why she wasn't able to do it before does feel rather obvious. Elend is at the peak of his powers here, a far cry from the timid scholar he was in book one. Here he feels like much more of a traditional hero. He probably gets the most development of any of the characters. Sazed is incredibly depressed throughout most of the book, having lost his faith, and his chapters can be hard to read, though it is impressive how well Sanderson depicts a lack of religious belief, despite being a devoted believer himself. Of course, Sazed does regain his faith in the end, which is a lot easier in a world where there is actual evidence that higher powers exist. We also get Spook as a new viewpoint. He was a minor character in the first two books, but here he takes the lead, infiltrating Ertor, ruled over by the dictator Quellion. He gains several surprising power upgrades, and even gets a love interest. And there are some surprising twists in his story, which I won't spoil here. We also get more of an insight into Kandra society. For the first time, one of them becomes a viewpoint, and we learn they have a whole civilization that the human characters know nothing about. Anyone who's been following the characters from book one should be warned there are no happy endings for most of them. Towards the end, they have to make many noble sacrifices in order to save the world. It may be controversial, but it adds to the feeling of massive apocalyptic events going on. If everyone had made it through, it would have felt like an anticlimax. As it is, the book does end on a hopeful note, which would have seemed impossible at the start. The trilogy as a whole is a compelling read, creating a detailed world and slowly unravelling the mysteries behind it. The characters are likeable, though few have any depth beyond the leads, and the prose is straightforward but effective. It's not a world you'd want to live on, it's more of a dystopia than anything else, but ultimately it's a hopeful story of people creating a better world for themselves against all the odds, and that could certainly make for a decent set of movies. That's not the end of Mistborn though. There are 4 more novels set hundreds of years later in a kind of steampunk western world, which sounds a lot more appealing. There is also Sanderson's other major series, the epic Stormlight Archive, which is set on a different world but still in the same Cosmere universe. I've already read his first novel, Elantris, and there are one or two moments in Mistborn where you think, hey, that sounds familiar. So I imagine there will only be more of them the more of his work you read. So I figure I'll alternate between Stormlight Archive and Mistborn Era 2, roughly in publication order. So if you'd like to see me continue reviewing the Cosmere books on here, then press like or subscribe, and I'll see you next time.